Hey everyone, Mary here again. It's hot as balls today. I mean, not so hot in the sense that it's like, the sun blazing down, but it's like super muggy and it's hard to dissipate heat. So, that's probably why my face is so shiny. It's like I'm trying to adjust the camera in every single way to make myself look better, but I always look terrible on camera. But anyhow, um, there's one particular person that I have found out about via this one particular YouTuber called Hayesenberg, who did a video on this one particular person in question. And from the big thing is that I did not know that this person was a pagan. And via Reddit, I found out he made some rather interesting videos about paganism and who can, I guess, access certain traditions, whether or not they're, white or other ethnicities or something like that. So I watched this video and I found it rather amusing, I guess you can say. I mean, you know me, I've mentioned it before on my channel. I'm not particularly fond of social justice, but in this case, it's sort of a double whammy for me because it's a video talking about paganism and criticizing social justice warrior ideology. So it's hopefully kind of a start for me. We'll see what happens. But in any case, this particular person is named Dakota. They are I guess a gender fluid person, or they say they're a gender fluid person. I have my own opinions about that sort of thing, but it's interesting because this person lives all the way across the continent in New York City, whereas I live all the way across the country on the West Coast. So I think it's a bit of like a clash of cultures, almost. I don't want to trash or deride or anything like that. They're how they identify, because that's not the purpose of this video. That's another topic for another video. What I'm criticizing here is their idea of who can practice what religion, depending on ethnicity. And if I mispronounce, or not mispronounce, like misgender, I guess that's the right word for it. Don't take it personal. I get cisgender people's pronouns wrong all the time. So, if you're trans or you're gender fluid or something like that, good luck with me. So, without further ado.
I think it's really important that we have a conversation between us, me and a specific group I belong in, which are white people who associate or are members of spiritual paths and traditions and practices outside of Abrahamic monotheism. We need to have a conversation. Because there's a staggering, overwhelming amount of denial that I encounter constantly with other white people who identify as witches or pagan or Wiccan or whatever it is that you identify with that is not Christian, Jewish, Muslim, any of that. It's this denial that somehow people believe that once we get into the realm of spirituality, ethics don't exist anymore, and that there are no ramifications or manifestations of racism, colorism, classism, prejudice, sexism. Like, none of this exists. Sexism, binarism, transphobia, homophobia. Like, none of this can exist in the realm of spirituality, and I need you to drop that.
I know that denial of prejudice exists within religion, and I think I can say I've experienced it myself. Not in the same sense that, one person of, a different ethnicity other than white, may experience it, but I think I have experienced it in the sense that, I've had people calling me, a white ape or Ratu or a child of Set or something like that because I'm white and I practice Canonicism. And I know it's just, name calling on the internet pretty much, but at the same time, there's a person behind that anonymous name on the internet. So there is someone out there who has these vitriolic and hateful beliefs towards people who practice either a religion was primarily practiced by non-whites in the past, or they just plain hate white people. It exists. Another thing I'll say, I think most people, they try and, I guess they put on rose-colored glasses when it comes to religion, because part of religion and ethics in religion is most people trying to find a common denominator with everyone else on this planet. Most religions, even pagan ones, try and see people as one, not necessarily as divided or by race, religion, creed, political stance, anything like that. For the point of many people want to see each other as one in religion and united under a creator or a god, or just connected by this planet. And I think that's partly the reason why we see sometimes denial of certain types of prejudices and isms, I guess you could say, in paganism. There are other explanations. Some people are actually, really racist or sexist or different things like that. You can see it in Asatru with or certain types of Odinism. You can also see it in Z Budapest, Dianic Wicca, where there's a lot of it gets a little crazy with man hating. But yeah, it does exist. But I think the reason why people ignore it is because they want a space to forget about all those sorts of things, all those sorts of ugly truths, and just be one with everyone else. So I think that's why it exists.
I need you to really, really take a look at yourself and your practice and ask yourself, am I doing anything that's racially insensitive? Am I doing something that is colonialism, essentially? Stop trying to force your way into spaces that are not for you.
I did just a cursory Google search of colonialism, and it's pretty much just the practice or policy of, certain countries acquiring control over another country and occupying it, putting settlers in, and exploiting it economically. And very many cultures have done this, not just white people. I mean, of course, we have, the age of imperialism and exploration, and that's something everybody knows about if you've ever gone through high school here in the U.S. But the Moors did it when they came from North Africa into the Iberian Peninsula, and the Japanese did it to the Chinese, so it's not limited to white people.
European, indigenous, and native beliefs, folk magics, all of it, were wiped out almost entirely. Probably 98% wiped out, okay? Now, how that was done is always going to be a subject of debate. There's people who want to tell the whole fallacy fucking story of the burning times. They want to say, Easter had to do with Ishtar. Please stop, okay? But what I do want to bring up, though, that I think is really, really important for us to talk about is that regardless of how it was done, it was done. You look at something like the beliefs of, the Yoruba, you look at Ifa, you look at these things, there was no break. There's been rises and falls, there's been, definitely the encroachment of Christianity and Islam specifically, but it was never wiped out, okay?
One thing I will say about Western African traditions is that they were not converted to Christianity as early as Europeans were. Pretty much not until the Atlantic slave trade did black people, or Western Africans, I should say, because that's not entirely accurate. Not until that time were they actually exposed to Christianity. Whereas for hundreds of years before that, Europeans had been either, forced by the sword to convert to Christianity, or they, converted because Emperor Constantine and many other leaders had converted themselves, or they just felt, well, my neighbor is converting to Christianity. If I want to trade to him, I better do it too. Western Africans and people within Africa practicing Ifa, Igbo, the Yoruba, all those sorts of folks, they didn't get the same treatment that white people did up in Europe. So that's probably why they have a longer tradition. That's why it's unbroken. They weren't exposed to the same onslaught that Europeans were.
That's what we have, unfortunately, is white people spiritually are lost wandering orphans that don't have any place in the world because there is no way for us to get back to our roots because we burnt down our own house, we chopped down our own tree, and we lost our way.
Native European pagans did not chop down their own tree. They converted, either to fit in after Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire at the point of a sword, or to keep being able to trade with other countries that had become Christian. Europe is a victim of Christianization. Temples were shut down and destroyed, sacked, throughout the beginning of the Dark Ages and later on. You have in 392 CE, Emperor Theodosius makes Christianity the only legal religion, and that was after Constantine made the religion, the official religion of Rome. And you also had Charlemagne in his conquest of the Saxons. He killed thousands of pagans because they refused to convert to Christianity. And it even happened in Russia in the late 900s. Prince Vladimir adopted Christianity, and his subjects could either choose to be baptized in the Dnieper River, or they could have drowned in it. So we're not lost little orphans or whatever you'd like to call it. It was stamped out. Many Christians did not choose to actually convert to Christianity. Either they died or they were forced to convert. And you can see this in particular traditions of Europe. You have Samhain, that's a good example. And you also have, other traditions like the Mummers Dance in England. And this is what is called Interpretatio Christiana. And I might be getting that pronunciation wrong. Don't blame me. And that is an adaptation of a non-Christian practice or tradition that was sort of reinterpreted to become Christian. And this is something that is highly recognized within history. You had many popes and many priests and many missionaries deciding, well, we can't make these people give up their traditions. So we'll just reinterpret them to make them more Christian. It's kind of like with Yule and people bringing in greenery and stuff to their houses because it was supposed to represent renewing life or the everlastingness of life, greenery, all that stuff. But they reinterpret it for Christmas or the birth of Christ. This is not, just before you try and object, this is not sort of whatever that was you were talking about with the burning times or whatever. This is a concentrated effort from the Catholic Church to repurpose pagan traditions so that it's more feasible to convert people and still keep their holidays. So there is a way to bring back at least some of the European traditions that we've lost, and that's through scholarly study and archaeology. Roman and Greeks have a dearth of records and mythology, and I don't need to tell you this. I don't need to tell anybody this, because if you get just a look at both Finch's mythology, you'll find the stories of the Roman and Greek gods within that. And you also have all the evidence and all the temples and ruins of ancient Greece and Rome within that area. And we can parse out how a lot of these people and their stories existed and worshipped and recognized their deities. The Celts and the Norse have less to go on, but there are records from Christian monks, like the Eddas and the Mabinogion and all that stuff. And we also have archaeology, a science that parses out all that evidence, all the artifacts, and makes an interpretation as to how these people actually lived and worshipped.
The answer to that is not trying to find a home in other people's traditions. Work with your ancestors. Try to access what you can that is ethical and is traced to your own blood and bones and honoring of the earth and things that are yours to claim, your birthrights, because you do have them. But
your own blood and bones? Really? I've talked about this before in some of my earlier videos. If you've seen my one video on paganism and racism, there's a lot of ums and uhs in it, and there still are on this video, because I cannot talk to a fucking camera for the life of me. But, yeah, religious biological determinism, you know, it sounds like a lot of, like, racism to me. And I can talk about that until the cows come home, until the sun sets and Ra goes into the Duat. But in this case, I will say, yeah, no.
Don't fuck with other people's birthrights and other people's traditions that are not yours to fuck with. Specifically, people you have privilege over. Stop!
Another thing I will say is that I don't believe in privilege whatsoever. There are perks, maybe, that white people have over, you know, other ethnicities within the United States. But it's not global, it's not universal, and it's certainly not applicable for a lot of people who are disadvantaged in other ways. Like, in my instance, I'm white, sure, yeah. I might not be pulled over by a cop or something, or I might not be followed around in a store. But it didn't stop me from being, you know, a poor little kid who couldn't afford a damn thing when she was a kid. And it couldn't stop my father from being, you know, poor, and in Wyoming with alcoholic parents who didn't know a damn thing.
If you can have someone initiate you as a Santera, as a, you know, Wangan, as whatever, okay? If you can get yourself into Haitian Voodoo, great. If you can do any of these things, great. But you need to only access it through the people whose heritage it is part of. You need to respect them, you need to listen to them, and you need to submit to them because it is theirs, it is not yours. So stop reenacting what our ancestors did and fucking over all these people, taking everything that's theirs and being unapologetic about it. Stop.
People don't go to African religions because they don't have traditions. It's because they have an interest in that tradition. An initiation is more a recognition of an established tradition than it is a recognition of ethnicity. It's not about white people fucking over non-whites and stealing, but ignoring the chain of command. We understand perfectly well that voodoo and Santeria are initiatory traditions. And if you can find somebody who will initiate you into that tradition, awesome, fantastic. But it's not like white privilege or colonialism for somebody to decide that they're going to just go in and start reading about these traditions and practice on their own. It's more about a lack of recognition of the chain of command or tradition. Because in these sorts of traditions, you have to go through a Vudasant or a Santero or whoever in order to learn how to conduct the rituals, how to worship these gods, all of that, because there's a specific formula, specific protocol that you would not be otherwise able to learn if, you did it just through book reading.
Because you have to understand that when you are someone, white girl Becky, sister of mine.
Also, who the fuck is Becky? I keep hearing about her all the fucking time, like via Tumblr, all over the place. Who the fuck is Becky?
Who goes into a botanica, doesn't speak Spanish, has no idea how to work with these people. Everything is foreign and exotic and wonderful and interesting and strange to you. And all you have to your name is, fucking, Solitary Witch by Silver Raven Wolf, and you decide that you want to go in and get a fucking Oya candle, and the woman behind the counter decides to fucking give you, sell you, she charges you $150 to take some beads off the wall, splash some Florida water on it, say a Hail Mary in Spanish so that you're wowed by the exotic brown person, and sell you a false set of aleques, and then you want to get upset because you've been had. No, you just paid a price of entry. Because
So just because somebody's uneducated in terms of Santeria or botanicas, you think they can be taken advantage of and that's fair? Well, great characterization of making botanica proprietors look like super duplicitous. Great job.
Fortunately, we're sitting here trying to reconstruct shit like the fucking Norse pantheon to somehow have some connection to our heritage, which not all of us even have. Like, there's this idea, like, if you're white, you can work with the Norse gods. It's like, you probably don't even have heritage with the Norse pantheon, but it's become this, like, catch-all that we're all grasping to because we don't know what to do.
And the whole thing with the Norse pantheon, I mean, can't you see how ridiculous this whole thing is? This whole thing is? I mean, are you going to make people take a DNA test to determine who or what they can or cannot worship? I mean, I think I mentioned this before in some of my other videos. I'm like, about a third Irish and a third British and like 20% Norse or Scandinavian. Does that limit me to the Celtic and Norse gods? Does just having 22%, or 20%, or however much, does that allow me to worship the Norse gods? Or do I have to have a quarter? Or do I have to have more? What about other people? What about people who are of mixed race? Who are either white or black? Mixture of the two. Whatever. I mean, it's so fucking asinine. I mean, you have people who are like, well, you have a temple of Isis that was established in Great Britain, London specifically, and that was during the Roman period. Does that make it okay for Europeans or British people to worship Isis or no? I mean, it's so fucking asinine. Are you gonna make everybody take a fucking DNA test just to, claim legitimacy or heritage to any particular pantheon? I mean, it's so impractical and stupid that I don't understand how anybody can say this is legitimate or that you can colonialize or anything and make it okay. Especially if you don't know what their ethnicity is. Yeah, it's a special type of stupid.
With that being said, I just want to say that there is an ethical way to go about your spirituality. There is a great way to go about your spirituality, but so many of us are not doing it. We either consistently demonize, villainize, vilify, reinforce stigma, or do all this shit about people of color and their practices, or we sit there and we demand to be a part of it and have us fed to us and handed to us and taught to us, and if we don't, then we're gonna, just fuck everything up. It's like,
I'm sorry to say it, but you're ethical way is segregation. I'm sorry, but it's true. If you believe that people should be cordoned off from any particular religious tradition because of their ethnic background, then you're a racist. And by racist, I mean somebody who has prejudice against somebody because of a race or their race. Demonization of non-European religions is due to ignorance. Maybe if people were able to study these non-European religions, they would actually realize that they have a lot in common, and they wouldn't demonize them. They would see that they're perfectly viable, and there's nothing to fear from them. But by your logic, I mean like European people of European descent. By your logic, people of European descent aren't allowed to study these particular religions, and thus we remain in the dark eternally. And people will still believe, all that shit about voodoo dolls and black versus white magic and all the stuff you were talking about before. The whole thing, the whole cycle continues because you think it's not okay to practice or study or anything of the sort of those particular religions that our ethnic heritage isn't connected to.
Happens so much in Brooklyn. You go to a place like these white-owned, white-run, white-taught spiritual centers, then you're going there to participate and purchase items that are associated with African traditional religions. You're going there and you're buying the Oya candle from a white person in a white shop that just patronizes white people, and it's white.
I think this one particular part shows just how much of a disparity that we have between East and West Coast culture, because I'm from the West Coast. I live in Washington, and I have never even seen a Santeria store. I have never seen anything vaguely talking about the Orishas other than, some of the books that I have talking about various deities, or I have a few tarot cards talking about gods and goddesses, and they include the Orisha in them. Maybe there's some in Seattle. I have no idea. I've tried looking it up. I can't find anything certainly reliable about that. And when I was in Seattle, going to school and different things like that, didn't see anything like that. There's very few pagan stores even in Seattle, as far as I know, or any of the surrounding areas. And from most of what you see in terms of pagan stores in this area, they're not botanicas, they're not anything specifically related to Santeria or Yoruba or Ifa, Igbo, anything. Any of that stuff. No Western African traditions or African diasporic traditions. When you go to a pagan store in my area, you see Wicca, maybe. Yeah, certainly Wicca. Maybe certain traditions like European religious traditions like Asatru and Druidry, Celtic religion, that sort of thing. Very rarely will you see Egyptian religion, which I'm most interested in, and it's the most frustrating because I can't find any fucking statuary. Other than like on fucking Amazon. And that takes a hell of a lot more time than, going to a fucking store and just buying the statuary that I want. Orisha or anything African, in terms of that respect, forget about it. You don't see that here. So you don't see any of these, white people trying to sell like freaking Orisha shit here or anything like that. African, Western, or Western African. None of that. No, you don't see that. Best I've ever seen where I live in terms of non-white or non-open traditions, gas stations for that are owned by the Native American tribes here, and they sell like sage, sweetgrass, artwork, native artwork, that sort of thing. That's the best you get here. So that's just kind of a freaking testament to the differences between New York City and the West Coast, especially northern West Coast, Washington. So you're not gonna see any white people selling that kind of shit here. So it's like when you hear about that, it's like you're fucking out to lunch.
People made the candle. It's like you're doing the spiritual equivalent of a white girl that goes to Urban Outfitters who gets a terrible fucking offensive replica of a Native American headdress that was made by white people for white people, disenfranchising Native people, and you're putting that on to go to the music festival because you want to be cool.
Are you talking about like Coachella or Burning Man or something like that? Because other than that, it's all Greek to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Then again, I don't go to a whole lot of music festivals. I'm kind of a nerd like that. But yeah, different things.
You're literally engaging in spiritual warfare and genocide, and you're reaping the benefits of that because your being white doesn't get left at the door once you enter the spiritual realm. So stop.
You would think that being European or African or Chinese or South Asian, Filipino, what have you, would all get left at the door when it comes to spirituality because, in essence, we're not our bodies. These bodies are vessels in which our souls inhabit. At least that's how I see it. So when you take away that spirit or physical vessel, we're all just human. I don't think that there's any particularly differentiating aspect of our souls that make us, specifically European or Asian or Native American or whatever. So this whole spiritual warfare kind of thing is just a foreign concept to me. That doesn't make any sense.
That makes me want to ask another question. So if I died or something like that, or if I were to, do like astral projection and leave my body, would I still be white? Or would it just be a soul? Because affixing a particular race to somebody who has left their mortal shell, or let loose the mortal coil, as Shakespeare would say, kind of seems kind of racist to me. So, because it's like, if you die and you leave your mortal body and you're still white or black or whatever, it feels like you're carrying on all that kind of racial baggage that you have for the longest fucking time. And it feels like you're getting rid of original sin. I thought that, being pagan, we were trying to get away from that original sin crap because that was a Christian thing. But I guess in terms of pagan SJW ideology, being white is still an original sin. Like, if you're white, then you're still evil, and you're still dirty, and you're just a horrible person because you benefit from this invisible white privilege, whatever the fuck that means. And quite frankly, it all seems asinine to me.
Dama is not a candle that you pop behind your fucking door because you want a house guardian. That is slavery. Stop.
Having a Lama Dama candle at your door, I would hardly call that slavery, really. I mean, you're probably going to flip a lid, but usually when magical practitioners light a candle or something of the sort for a particular spirit, it's not to demand that they actually do something for you. It's more of a petitioning or a prayer, hey, can you help me? Or hey, can you help protect my house? That sort of thing. I've only ever seen, anything that could remotely be called slavery, like in ceremonial magic where they'll like trap a demon or something like that and demand that the demon do stuff for them and then they'll let them go. That I could see as slavery. Lighting a candle and asking for help for a particular spirit sounds as far as from slavery as you can possibly get.
You sit there and you have your Wiccan and you want your patron and matron and you want to make them super exotic and cool, and somebody told you that all gods are the aspect of the same god and all goddesses are the aspect of the same goddess, and so it's all part of one divinity, so you decide that you want to go and get the most exotic god and goddess that you can. You need to stop.
I believe that all deities, all gods, all goddesses exist in some capacity, but I'm not a soft polytheist. I'm a hard polytheist. And that means Norse gods are probably separate from Kemetic gods, and Celtic gods are probably separate from African gods in some respect. I don't know if that means, maybe they're the same entity understood by different cultures. I don't make any claims to that one sort. But, when you say maybe all gods are one god or all goddesses are one goddess, and you don't like that because people use the most exotic gods that they can find for their god and goddess, maybe you should be arguing against soft polytheism rather than anything else.
Just because we've been cut off from the deities that we believe in, and long story short, basically any deity from Europe that really just wants any attention they can get because they've been floundering for hundreds of years, possibly thousands of years, because they haven't had anybody honor them, they're going to be a little bit more forgiving if you fuck things up or mess up the words or get things wrong.
Who says I believe in European deities? I mean, tried working with them for a while, especially with my sister, who is Celtic pagan, and especially with the Celtic deities. All I ever felt like, really, except for one exception, which is Bridget, I felt like talking to a wall. I never got really an answer. Never felt anything. Not really worked with the Germanic gods, but that's more another hang-up of my own, especially considering Nazism and how Himmler wanted to kind of reinstate the Germanic religion because he believed that, bringing back like what they believed was Aryan culture, religion, different things like that, that they would bring back the primordial state of Aryans when they were the most creative and most powerful, and they created civilization and stuff. It's almost like trying to bring back Atlantis almost. I have a book about it. I should probably put it up in the links, and I'll do that. But that's something that's already always in the back of my mind when I study anything about the Norse pantheon. So it's more of a my own personal hang up about that, and tried with the Celtic deities, never really got anything save for one. So I don't know what to tell you. The European gods don't do it for me. So it's extremely funny to hear somebody saying, well, you have to worship European gods because you're European. It's like, no, you don't have to worship any particular gods because you're whatever. If you're African, you don't have to worship African gods. You can go to Wicca, you can go to the Norse religion, also true. You can be Roman Reconstructionist. I don't care. If any other particular race, wanted to learn about ours, ours by white people stuff, have at it, Haas. I don't care. It's great. Let's learn from each other. That's my only thing. Especially, since sometimes the deities of your ancestors don't call to you. And I know that from personal experience.
When you have a deity like Oya, I'm sorry to keep using that as an example, but Oya, the fucking faith to Oya never stopped. This is a deity who is within her own power, and you're sitting there, white girl Becky, bringing this candle home, trying to commune with a deity. You haven't consulted Elegua, you haven't done anything first, you're not crowned, you're not initiated, and you want to do this shit. Meanwhile, she grows a beard, wears pants, and fucking carries a machete and goes to war, and that's who you want to fuck with? Like, maybe you don't want to do that. Work with a couple saints first. Like, ugh.
Yeah, or in other words, just go up the chain of command. Just because a person's white doesn't mean that they can't understand a particular tradition. And it doesn't mean that they're incapable of learning one, especially if they have a teacher. It's about respecting the chain of command, the tradition, and the people who are within that tradition. That's it.
This whole idea of like white magic versus black magic, yeah, that's not barely coded racist language. What is black magic? Offensive magic, like those people who do voodoo. Like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me right now? That you sit here and you act like you are a part of the earth and you are a witch and we are all human and we all need to band together. Meanwhile, you're sitting there fucking demonizing people of color and their religious practices and their traditional practices.
White and black magic don't actually have anything to do with race. I hate to break it to you, but black people aren't actually black. They're brown. The terms for white and black didn't actually arise until like, the 1500s, when people were trying to justify slavery, and they couldn't use the excuse, well, these people aren't Christian anymore. Yeah, sad but true. It actually has more to do with human evolution because humans are diurnal creatures. We live during the day, we go to sleep at night. We don't have the adaptations in our eyes in order to see, in the dark. So what do we see when, you look at in the night? You see a bunch of blackness. So it's mysterious, it's scary. You don't know if you're going to see a saber-toothed tiger coming up to eat your face. So we associate the dark, the blackness, with everything that's scary and mysterious and stuff that we don't understand, which is very much like what we term black magic, or, to be more accurate, harmful or malignant magic. That's where the value of fixations come from. It doesn't come from, oh, well, they're black. These people are black colored. Africans aren't black colored, they're brown. Yeah, that's where it comes from. Well, you'd think that if white people were actually allowed to learn voodoo and other African diasporic religions without, screams of cultural appropriation, we could actually dispel all these negative beliefs that people hold about these particular religions, and nobody would affix, all these sorts of terrible things to that. But what do I know?
They were stronger than us.
They are strong, but they aren't stronger than us. They were luckier.
We could learn from them. Look at African traditional religions. Look at the diaspora. Look at the way that all of these beliefs came from the Yoruba in West Africa. The slaves were brought, and through slavery, 500 years of slavery in America alone, from us all the way down to fucking Brazil, all the way down. There's like 24 different traditions that are still rooted in the same thing that survived.
The survival and diversification of African diasporic religions is a wonderful thing. It's a testament to human ingenuity and adaptation in the face of great adversity, and I admire the people who are able to keep their traditions. At the same time, Europeans went through a much heavier onslaught of stamping out of their religions by the Christian Church, and it happened over quite a long period of time. Ever since the fall of the Roman Empire, and it was practically, complete by, well, probably around the 1000. So it happened over 1,000 years, probably more. So it's a lot different. What Europeans went through is much different than what Africans went through. And before anybody jumps down my throat, I'm not saying either one was worse. Both things these people went through were terrible, and I make no claims as to which one had it worse. So before anybody jumps down my throat or starts, screaming about that sort of thing, quiet.
We could barely hold on to fucking Bridget without her becoming a saint.
Bridget is worshipped in voodoo. Is that cultural appropriation?
Stop! Stop! Now white people are bandwagoning on hoodoo and root work, and they think that it's accessible to them and it's theirs and blah 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 blah. It's like, girl, stop! Stop! Like,
I do hoodoo. I don't care what you think. Also, Cat Ironwood, if I recall correctly, she actually learned from people, African Americans. They taught her a lot of that stuff about hoodoo and root work. And People still hate her. Who knows? I guess you can't ever win, especially if you're white. If you're white, you're never right, according to especially SJWs.
White people, like, look, you can't do things without impunity just because it's my spiritual beliefs. Like, stop. Just stop. Okay.
I've had to endure this video in your whiny voice for over 10 minutes, so please, you stop. That about sums it up for me in this video. Please feel free to comment, what have you. I certainly enjoy discussion, but I imagine this one might get me some vitriol, maybe from the original poster. I cannot even imagine what that would be like. But I shall suffer the onslaught. God save my broken little body, whatever. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope some good comes out of it. Thank you, and some Nev tea.